Ever feel like life just happened to you? Like you blinked and suddenly you're not the man you thought you'd be? Clayton, a 42-year-old security guard, knew that feeling better than most. 9 years guarding a warehouse gate, a far cry from the architect he once dreamed of becoming. The fluorescent lights of the guard shack seemed to mock him, reflecting the fatigue etched on his round face, the salt and pepper stubble a testament to a life on autopilot. $52,500 in debt and a string of regrets. He was just existing, not living. His apartment, perched above a 24-hour laundromat, smelled of detergent and loneliness, a stark reminder of his divorce. Weekends with his son, Leo, were a mix of joy and quiet desperation. He longed to be a figure his son could admire, but how could he, stuck in this rut? One day, Leo asked him, "Dad, what did you dream of doing when you were a kid?" Clayton choked, the question hitting him like a punch to the gut. The flicker of pity in Leo's eyes was the breaking point. That night, staring at the rising sun after another shift, Clayton felt a desperate need to reclaim something, anything. He found an old notebook, its pages yellowed with time. He knew he couldn't keep living like a ghost. As dawn painted the sky, he decided to write 3 simple sentences, a small act of defiance against the crushing weight of his life. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Maybe, just maybe, it was enough to rewrite his story. Clayton's alarm blared at 10:00 p.m., a jarring sound in the quiet apartment. He silenced it with a heavy hand, the weight of the night shift pressing down before it even began. Coffee and a stale donut from the gas station were his pre-shift ritual, a small comfort against the monotony ahead. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., guarding the gate of a silent warehouse, a world away from the architectural firm he'd once called home. A ghost of a life, a distant memory. The warehouse gate was a lonely place, lit by harsh fluorescent lights and the occasional passing truck. Clayton sat, slumped in his chair, the thin white scar above his right eyebrow a silent reminder of a football game from a life that felt like someone else's. He'd replay that day he was fired, the words of his boss echoing in his mind, the feeling of betrayal still sharp after all these years. He'd let them blame him, didn't fight back, coward. He thought of Leo, his son, now a teenager. Sarah, his ex-wife, had moved on, remarried, a life he could have had. He wanted to connect with Leo, to be a dad he could be proud of, but what did he have to offer? A dead-end job and a mountain of debt. $22,500 on maxed-out credit cards from the divorce, $30,000 still owed on that architecture degree, a constant reminder of dreams unfulfilled. A silent ache in his chest as he watched Leo get older. He should be doing more with his life. The fluorescent lights hummed, a soundtrack to his despair. Clayton would often find himself scribbling on the back of incident reports, not the details of trucks but small, quiet poems, observations of the empty parking lot at 3 a.m., thoughts too honest to share. He'd crush the papers up and bin them before anyone could see what he'd done. What could he say about the life of a graveyard gatekeeper? He's more than that. Arriving home at dawn, the rising sun mocking his weary state, Clayton sat at his small kitchen table. The apartment, sparsely furnished and sterile, offered little solace. He pulled out the old notebook, its cover faded and worn. Grabbing his pen, the first sentence came to him slowly, hesitant, a whisper of gratitude. "I am grateful for the sunrise." It was small, insignificant, but it was a start. The second sentence took longer. "I will fix the leaky faucet today." A tangible task, a small victory. Finally, the affirmation, "I am capable of more than this." The words felt foreign, almost a lie, but he wrote them down anyway. He fell into a restless sleep, the 3 sentences swirling in his mind. Waking in the late afternoon, he ate a microwave meal and watched a documentary on sustainable housing, the blueprints and designs sparking a flicker of something he thought was long dead. After the show, he looked down at the leaky faucet and grabbed his tools. It wasn't much, but it was a start to something more. He tightened a bolt, felt a twinge in his back, but for once he didn't feel the usual despair. A hint of something else stirred inside him, hope. The next evening, fluorescent lights buzzed above Clayton in the warehouse gate shack, the asphalt gray stretching out before him. 11:17 p.m. Another truck rumbled past, carrying anonymous cargo into the night. 9 years he'd been doing this. 9 years since the firm, since Sarah, since everything had started to fall apart. He gripped the lukewarm coffee, the stale taste familiar. $16.67 an hour. Just enough to keep the creditors at bay, keep Leo fed on weekends. $52,500 in debt. A constant, low hum of anxiety. His radio crackled, a dispatcher's voice droning on about pallet locations. He mumbled a confirmation, his voice barely audible. Another hour ticked by, 1:48 a.m. A lone street lamp cast long shadows across the empty parking lot. He thought about Leo, 14 years old, almost a man. The memory of Leo asking about his dreams, a stab of guilt. He pulled out an incident report and uncapped his pen. The usual poem started to form. The moon hangs like a broken promise. He crushed the paper up again, a knot forming in his stomach. Useless. He wasn't a poet, wasn't an architect. Just a 42-year-old security guard watching the world pass him by. His back ached. His chest felt tight. Another truck appeared. Sunrise, 7:18 a.m. The laundromat below his apartment already buzzing with activity, the smell of detergent clinging to everything. Clayton sat at the kitchen table, exhaustion pulling at his eyes. He reached for the notebook, the pen heavy in his hand. I am grateful for the warmth of the coffee, he paused. I will call Sarah about Leo's school play. It was a small thing, a difficult conversation, but he knew he needed to be there for Leo. Finally, he wrote, I am finding my purpose. Still a lie, but the echo of the previous day lingered. He dialed Sarah's number, the phone ringing 3 times before she answered. Her voice, cool and polite. Clayton, what do you need? He swallowed hard. It's about Leo's play, I want to be there. A pause, he'd like that, it's next Friday. They spoke for a few minutes, the conversation stilted but civil. He agreed to pick Leo up afterward, a small victory. He hung up, the tightness in his chest easing slightly. He walked to the laundromat below. He wasn't a gatekeeper for his son's life. He will be there. Sunrise bled through the gap in the blinds, painting stripes across the stained linoleum floor. 7:32 a.m. Clayton stared at the ceiling, Sarah's clipped tone replaying in his head. Leo's play. The last one he'd missed was because of a double shift, a lie he told himself to avoid facing Sarah and the crowd of happy families. Shame, a familiar weight, settled on his chest. $52,500 in debt. $16.67 an hour. Security guard. Was this it? He pictured Leo, his lanky frame hunched over a textbook, the same flicker of intelligence in his eyes that Clayton used to see in the mirror. What was he teaching his son? Resignation, failure. He thought of his own father, calloused hands stained with grease, a man who never complained, never gave up. A man Leo never knew. He squeezed his eyes shut. Damn it. The ache in his lower back intensified. Another 10-hour shift looming. More coffee, more stale donuts, more watching the world move while he stood still. He remembered the architecture firm, the blueprint spread across his desk, the thrill of seeing a design come to life. He had been so close, so full of potential. The memory twisted like a knife. He swung his legs over the side of the bed. The cold floor sent a jolt through him. He walked to the kitchen, grabbed the dusty notebook and flipped it open. The 3 sentences stared back at him, a pathetic attempt at self-improvement. He slammed the book shut. The weight of the last 9 years threatened to crush him. He needed to do more than just write empty words, more than just show up. He grabbed his keys, his worn wallet. He needed to do something to break the cycle. He thought of his toolbox, untouched in the closet for years. He went to the closet. Inside, he lifted the heavy toolbox. A faint smell of sawdust and oil wafted up. He opened it, the glint of steel. He remembered building birdhouses with Leo when he was little, the boy's wide-eyed wonder as the pieces came together. Now Leo was too old for birdhouses. What could he build for him, for himself? His hands trembled. He took a deep breath and walked back to the kitchen table. He opened the notebook again. He crossed out, I am finding my purpose. He put the pen back to the paper. I will find a way to build something with my hands today. The words felt different this time, heavier with a sense of intent. He will find a way to change the reality for him and his son. Clayton, 42, a security guard for 9 years, stared at the sentence. The fluorescent light of his kitchen buzzed overhead, mocking his inertia. The apartment above the laundromat smelled of stale detergent and defeat. He was drowning in debt, $52,500 weighing him down. He saw Leo's face, a fleeting expression of pity. That settled it. He thought about the day he lost his architecture job, the shame of the accusation, the swift, brutal dismissal. He should have fought. He should have stood his ground. Instead, he'd let it break him. He let it cost him Sarah. He let it cost him those precious years with Leo. No more. "I'm done," he muttered, his voice rough from disuse. He pictured his ex-wife, Sarah, remarried, probably wondering what had become of him. He thought of his son, Leo, growing up, needing a father, not a ghost. A man his son can look up to and be proud of again. That's the deepest desire, not just a job, but respect. He stood up abruptly, pushing the chair back with a scrape. The familiar ache in his lower back flared. He ignored it. He wouldn't live like this anymore. He would do more than just exist in a security guard uniform, shuffling through the night. He owed it to himself. He owed it to Leo, to reclaim something of the man he once was. The man who dreamed of building, of creating, not just guarding. He grabbed his phone and dialed. Sarah answered on the third ring. "Clayton," her voice was wary. "I know, bad time, but I wanted to let you know that I'm gonna be busy this coming weekend. Can you take Leo out of my hands?" He braced himself. "Yeah, sure, Sarah, no problem." He waited for her to end the call, but instead she asks, "Look, Leo asked about you. He wants to know about the buildings you designed." His breath caught in his throat. He hadn't spoken of his past life in years, not since he was fired. Tell him, I'll tell him all about it this weekend. Maybe we can build something." The words came out shaky, but the intent was solid. He was making a promise to his son and himself. He hung up, the tremor in his hands intensifying. He hadn't built anything in years. The thought terrified and exhilarated him. He looked around his drab apartment at the peeling wallpaper and the cheap furniture. He was surrounded by the physical manifestation of his failure. He needed a plan, not a grand, sweeping, impossible plan. Something small, something achievable, something to build on. That night, staring out at the empty warehouse parking lot at 3 a.m., Clayton replayed the conversation with Sarah over and over. Leo wanted to know about his buildings. Not the security guard, not the divorced dad struggling with debt. The architect, the creator, the man he used to be. He couldn't let Leo down, but more importantly, he couldn't let himself down again. The past haunted him, but it also held a key. He remembered a motivational speaker he'd seen on TV once, years ago, spouting some nonsense about morning rituals and positive affirmations. He'd scoffed at the time. Now, desperate for anything, he considered it. He couldn't meditate. He wasn't about to start chanting. But maybe there was something to the idea of setting an intention. He reached for an incident report form and started to scribble. His pen hovered over the paper. What could he possibly be grateful for? His life felt like a wasteland. Then he thought of Leo. He was grateful for his son, for the chance to see him, to talk to him, to maybe, just maybe, make a difference in his life. He wrote it down, grateful for Leo. The words felt awkward, forced, but they were there. Next, what would he accomplish today? Not some monumental task, something small, something real. He'd fix that leaky faucet in the bathroom. He'd been putting it off for months. It was a constant drip, 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 a soundtrack to his despair. Fix the faucet. Simple, achievable. Finally, the affirmation. This was the hardest. What could he possibly affirm about his future? He was a 42-year-old security guard with a mountain of debt and a shattered dream. He closed his eyes, picturing Leo's face, his son's hesitant question about the buildings he designed. He pictured them, side by side, building something together. He pictured himself a man his son can look up to and be proud of again. He wrote, "I will rebuild my life for Leo." The words felt hollow, but also a little bit true, a flicker of hope in the dead of night. He folded the incident report and tucked it into his pocket. He knew he couldn't go on like this, living on autopilot, defined by his regrets. He needed to take control, one small step at a time, one sentence at a time. He sat back, the fluorescent lights of the laundromat sign buzzing outside his window. $52,500 in debt, a failed marriage, a career in ruins. The weight of it all pressed down on him, heavier than usual. But in his pocket, that folded incident report felt different. It wasn't a solution. It was a start. Clayton thought about Leo. His son, 14 years old, standing on the precipice of manhood, and all Clayton could offer him was the example of a man who had given up. He saw Sarah's face, her quiet disappointment when she realized he wasn't going to fight for his career, for their family. Regret, a constant companion, twisted in his gut. He'd let them all down. He got up, walked to the window, and stared out at the empty streets. A pre-dawn gray was creeping into the sky. Another day beginning, another shift ending, another cycle of disappointment about to begin. But this time, something was different. This time, he had a promise to keep, to himself and to Leo. He walked to the bathroom, the leaky faucet dripping its relentless rhythm. He grabbed his toolbox from under the sink, the tools gathering dust. He hadn't used them in years, not since he tinkered with his old '67 Mustang, a relic of a younger, more hopeful Clayton. As he tightened the wrench, he recalled the pride he felt graduating college, a fleeting moment of being the man his family expected, a man he believed he could be. He wrestled with the corroded pipe, knuckles scraped, frustration rising. "Damn it," he muttered under his breath. He almost gave up, almost walked away. But then he remembered the 3 sentences. Fix the faucet. It wasn't about the faucet, it was about keeping his word. It was about proving to himself that he could still accomplish something. He finally got the new washer in place and the dripping stopped. Silence. He stared at the fixed faucet, a small victory in a sea of failures. But it was a victory nonetheless. Later that morning, as he lay in bed, the sunrise painting streaks of orange through his blinds, doubt crept in. What's the point, he thought. 3 sentences aren't going to change anything. But then he pictured Leo again, that flicker of pity in his eyes, and he knew he had to try, for Leo, for himself, to prove that the man he used to be wasn't entirely gone. He would write his 3 sentences again tomorrow, and the day after that. He would rebuild his life one sentence at a time. The 10:00 p.m. alarm blared from his phone, a jarring start to another night. Clayton, 42, security guard with 9 years' experience, hit snooze. He lay there, the weight of his debts, $52,500 in total, a constant gnawing anxiety pressing down on him. 20 minutes later, he dragged himself up, the apartment smelling faintly of the laundromat below. He splashed water on his face, the pale blue eyes in the mirror reflecting a man he barely recognized. Resigned, beaten. He choked down lukewarm coffee and a stale donut, the fluorescent lights of the warehouse gate already looming in his mind. As he walked, the asphalt gray stretched out before him, another journey along the path of asphalt gray. He tried to recall the last time he felt true joy, not just a fleeting moment of distraction. The graduation, the first building, they felt like distant memories. The night stretched on, the hum of the generator a constant drone. A truck driver pulling in for a delivery offered a curt nod. Clayton returned it, the exchange brief and impersonal, another night blending into the next. His shift crawled. At 3 a.m., he found himself staring at the steel gate, the chain-link fence illuminated by the harsh security lights. He pulled out an incident report, pen in hand. He started to write, not about the shift, not about the warehouse, but about the way the moonlight filtered through the clouds, casting long shadows across the yard, a poem about loneliness. He crumpled it up, ashamed. He was a security guard, not a poet. What was he even doing? The memory of Leo's face flickered. The next morning, 7:15 a.m. As the sunrise painted the sky sunrise orange, he sat at his kitchen table, the familiar dread creeping in. He opened the notebook, the cheap paper rough beneath his calloused hands. The words stared back at him from yesterday, grateful for a working faucet, accomplished, stay awake, affirmation, I am not a failure. They seemed pathetic, childish. He wanted to tear the page out, to give up. What's the point? He mumbled, his low-pitched voice trailing off. He remembered the day he lost his job at the architectural firm, age 30, blamed for someone else's mistake. The shame, Sarah's growing disappointment, it all crashed down on him again. But then Leo. "What did you dream of, Dad?" the question echoed in his mind. He picked up the pen again. "One thing I am grateful for," the sun came up. "One thing I will accomplish today, walk around the block. One affirmation, I can still learn." That walk was brutal. His overweight frame, 255 pounds, strained with every step. The asphalt was cracked, the buildings industrial and soulless. He passed a group of construction workers, their laughter echoing in the morning air. He averted his eyes, feeling a pang of envy. They were building something. What was he building? He wanted to quit, to turn back, to sink back into the numbness. But he forced himself to keep going, one step at a time. The tightness in his chest was heavy. Back in his apartment, sweat dripping, he felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in years. Pride, hope, he didn't know, but he had done it. He had walked around the block, he had kept his word. That night at work, he found himself sketching on the back of an incident report again. Not poetry this time, a house. A small, sustainable house bathed in the warm sunrise orange light. He quickly crumpled it up, shoving it in his pocket, the shame creeping back. But this time it felt different. A little lighter. Day 12. The fluorescent lights of the warehouse seemed a little less harsh. The asphalt gray parking lot a little less desolate. Clayton wrote his 3 sentences before dawn. Grateful for the quiet, will listen to Leo, I am strong. He'd started walking 2 blocks now, the tightness in his chest easing a little each day. He even managed a weak smile for Mrs. Rodriguez at the laundromat as he walked past. That weekend, Leo came over. "Hey, Dad." Clayton noticed Leo's shoulders were slumped a little like his own. He remembered his son asking about his dreams. Fear punched him in the gut. He kept his voice steady. "Hey, Leo, anything on your mind?" Leo shrugged, kicking at a loose thread on the rug. "Just school, it's dumb." Clayton bit back the urge to offer generic advice. He listened. Really listened. Leo talked about unfair teachers, annoying classmates, the pressure of fitting in. Clayton didn't interrupt, just nodded. When Leo finally stopped, Clayton simply said, "That sounds rough, kiddo." Leo looked up, surprised. "Yeah, it is." Later, as Leo was leaving, he paused at the door. "Thanks, Dad, for listening." Day 16. Clayton felt a lightness he hadn't felt in years. He was grateful for Leo would fix the squeaky door and affirmed that he was valuable. The walk felt easier. He even picked up the pace a little. At the warehouse, he noticed a poster for a carpentry apprenticeship program at the community college. He stared at it for a long time, the faces of the construction workers seeming to mock him. Security guard. That's all he was now. He almost walked away. But then he remembered Leo, the flicker of pity in his son's eyes. He pulled out his phone and took a picture of the poster. Day 21, 3 weeks. Clayton could barely believe it. The 3 sentences had become a lifeline. He was grateful for the sunrise, would apply for the apprenticeship program, and affirmed he was worthy of a second chance. He found himself sketching during his breaks again, not just houses, but furniture, intricate woodworking designs. He even started humming while he walked his rounds, a low, gravelly tune he hadn't sung in years. He started making eye contact with people, the truck drivers, the warehouse workers, even his boss, a gruff man named Bob. He started saying good morning and have a good night. He started to see them as people, not just shadows in the pre-dawn gloom. That night he caught Bob staring at him. Bob grunted, "You seem different, Clayton." Clayton just shrugged, a small smile playing on his lips. "Maybe I am, Bob, maybe I am." Day 30, 1 month. Clayton stared at the rising sun, a pale orange smear against the gray sky. $2,800 a month wasn't enough. $52,500 in debt hung over him like a storm cloud. His apartment smelled of stale coffee and regret. But something felt different. He was grateful for the quiet solitude of the morning, would finish the apprenticeship application, and affirmed that he had the strength to build a better future. The words felt less like a mantra, more like a promise. He walked his route at the warehouse, past the loading docks, past the rows of silent trucks. The fluorescent lights hummed, a constant, irritating drone. But tonight he noticed something else. A forklift parked awkwardly near a loading bay, its forks slightly bent. He knew that machine. He'd spent hours fixing farm equipment with his dad as a kid. He walked over, ran his hand along the cold steel. The memory of that graduation day, his dad's calloused hand on his shoulder, flashed in his mind. Bob found him there, leaning over the forklift. "Something wrong, Clayton." Clayton straightened up, wiped his hands on his pants. "Forklift's out of alignment. Someone's going to hurt themselves." Bob frowned. "Maintenance is coming tomorrow." Clayton shrugged. "I could fix it. Got some tools in my car." Bob hesitated. He'd seen the change in Clayton, the renewed energy. "All right, Clayton, but if you mess it up." Clayton just nodded, a ghost of a smile on his face. "No problem, Bob." The next morning, Leo was waiting at the door when Clayton got home. "Dad, you missed my soccer game again." The familiar wave of guilt washed over him. He hated this. He hated being a security guard on the night shift. He hated the pity in his son's eyes. He took a deep breath. "I know, Leo, I'm sorry, but I'm working on something that will change things." Leo raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "Like what?" Clayton hesitated. He hadn't told anyone about the apprenticeship. I applied for a program, carpentry. I want to build things again." Leo's eyes widened, a flicker of something that wasn't pity, but maybe hope. "Really, Dad, that's cool." That evening, Sarah called. "Clayton, Leo told me about the carpentry thing. Is this some midlife crisis?" Clayton clenched his jaw. He was so tired of being dismissed. "No, Sarah, it's not a crisis. It's a chance to be something more than what you think I am." There was silence on the other end of the line, then a soft voice. "Well, Clayton, good for you." He hung up, a strange mix of relief and defiance swirling inside him. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't invisible anymore. Maybe he was building something more than just 3 sentences. Maybe he was building a life. Clayton arrived at the warehouse gate that night, a different kind of weariness settling in. Not the dull ache of resignation, but the thrum of nervous energy. He thought about Leo's hesitant cool. It was a start. He settled into his routine, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the hum of the idling trucks. He pulled out his notebook, the familiar weight comforting in his hands. Bob, the day shift guard, ambled over, nursing a coffee. "Machine still running good, eh, Clayton?" Clayton nodded, a rare smile gracing his face. "Runs like a top, just needed a little coaxing." Bob chuckled. "You always were good with your hands. Shame you're stuck in this gig." The words hung in the air, unspoken truths finally voiced. Clayton just shrugged, the sting less sharp than it once was. He was doing something about it. The 3 sentences had become a lifeline. Each morning, before the restless sleep claimed him, he wrote, "Grateful for Leo's smile. I will finish the blueprint tonight. I'm a capable craftsman." The blueprint. He'd found his old AutoCAD software online, a free trial. The secret dream was starting to take shape on his laptop, the small, sustainable house, lines appearing, walls rising. He hadn't felt this focused, this alive in years. He spent his breaks watching tutorials online, refreshing his skills. The old knowledge was buried deep, but it was there, waiting to be unearthed. During his shift, he started sketching again, designs swirling in his mind, transferred to the backs of incident reports, a secret world taking shape in the lonely hours. The poetry faded, replaced by technical drawings, angles and measurements filling the page. One afternoon, Leo came over to Clayton's apartment. "Dad, can you help me with my science project? We have to build a model bridge." Clayton's heart leaped. This was it. A chance to connect. He rummaged through his meager tool collection, a forgotten box of woodworking tools unearthed from the back of his closet. He showed Leo how to measure, how to cut, how to glue. They worked side by side at the small kitchen table, the scent of sawdust filling the air. For the first time in a long time, Clayton felt like a father, not just a distant figure in his son's life. That night, staring at the warehouse gate, the chain-link fence seemed less like a cage and more like a frame, a backdrop to a new beginning. He closed his eyes, visualizing the house, the wood, the sunlight streaming through the windows. He pictured Leo laughing, Sarah smiling him. Building. He opened his eyes, the fluorescent lights suddenly less harsh, the asphalt less gray. He was still Clayton, the 42-year-old security guard with 9 years' experience.